listening to the IELTS podcast. Learn from tutors and ex-examiners who are masters of IELTS preparation. Your host, Ben Worthington.
Pronunciation. Advanced IELTS speaking skills. Hello, my name is Ben Worthington and I'm from the UK and I've been helping students pass the IELTS exam for over 10 years now. Why do I do it? Well, I just love working with students who are ambitious, who are results orientated, and who are going places. Because there's nothing worse than teaching a demotivated student who's just there because the company forces them to go, and it looks bad if they don't turn up. So they just turn up, do the bare minimum, and at the very best, they're maintaining their English. But the thing is with IELTS students, the vast majority are going places, going to new countries, new challenges, new companies, new jobs, new professions, new currencies, going places. And personally, I believe that's a good match because I'm results orientated, I'm enthusiastic, and I just love working with this type of student. So as I said, I got started over 10 years ago. I was a general English teacher. I quickly decided IELTS students are the best students, my favorite students. But I was also lost. I was struggling, so that's what brought me to start IELTS Podcast. The first episodes, I'm just interviewing experts and I'm testing out what worked. One pronunciation tutor or one speaking tutor tells me, "Oh, Ben, you should get your students to start mimicking newscasters." Try it out and wow, it works. Let's include a whole module about this in the Speaking Confidence course. And that's how we progressed. We did the same for the writing course, for the Academic Task 1 course. And after years of doing this, I've realized that nowadays students are using tools, not information, to pass the exam. I'll tell you more about that later on. But in this tutorial, we are going to look at how proper pronunciation helps you convey your message clearly, make sure that the listener understands you accurately, and we're going to look at what parts of speech might be challenging for speakers of different languages, how to improve your pronunciation, the negative impact of pronunciation on IELTS Part 3 answers. We'll discuss the concept of connected speech, and also I want to share with you a story about my wife and what she said to my parents when we were in England, when she was in England for the first time. And my parents had a very different opinion about her after what she said, and it needed my correction. But I'll tell you more about that later. So, why is pronunciation important? Well, obviously, for successful communication, you need to be producing the sounds, the stress patterns, in a way that the listener can understand in order to understand what you're saying accurately. A good pronunciation also it enhances clarity, coherence, fluency, making it easier for the examiner to assess your skills. Now, it also helps you convey your ideas confidently and effectively. Also, just one other point, I just want to tell you a story about an Israeli friend I had. Like one day we're just walking in the city, I think it was in Budapest, and we'd been talking in English until that point. And then he tells me, I spent a couple of years in Colombia. And I was like, really? And I just switched to Spanish. I don't know, I think it was partly to show off my Spanish skills, which were good back then. Nowadays, not so much. Anyway, I was just curious, wanted to show off and test him. So I switched to Spanish. He replied in Spanish. And then afterwards, I was like, really good. Your accent's pretty good. And he was like, you know what, Ben? It's not that good because you wouldn't have mentioned my accent. And I was like, if it was really good. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, we've been speaking in English since I met you, and you never once said I had a good accent. And the point here is that, it's kind of almost disappointing, I guess, from a language learner's point of view. But if you reach the point where your pronunciation is so eloquent and just so accurate, it goes missing, it disappears. And it kind of like goes full cycle. Anyway, I thought that was quite an interesting anecdote. It stuck with me for a long time. So anyway, let's go. Pronunciation is crucial for a successful IELTS test. We all know this. We all know that if the examiner wants to understand you, you're going to have to express yourself clearly and confidently. Now, let's have a look at a few different speakers from different countries and the problems that they might have. On this list, at the end of the list, they have got Indian speakers, and I've got Germans as well, French and whatnot, but I tried not to make it so European centric. So I just picked out the major languages. I'm sorry, Italians, you're not included. But, you know, it's way too easy nowadays just to be European centric, even with Brexit. So let's jump in. Spaniards, I love you. You know that. However, with the pronunciation, regarding pronunciation, the TH sound, you know, and the H sound as well. The TH is th. You put your tongue between your teeth and you pull it back just as you want to make the th sound. I know a lot of students also struggle with the H sound. Hello. No, hello. It's softer. It's not like the Spanish ch. Next one, Chinese. So with the what I find a lot with the Chinese speakers are the sounds that I think don't exist, vowel sounds and consonant sounds that don't exist in Mandarin, such as the L and the R, and distinguishing between those. An incredible challenge, and hats off if you've managed to conquer that. Perhaps send me an email if you've got a good technique on solving that. Germans, what mistakes do the Germans make? Yes, it's true, Germans can make mistakes. Anyway, what's quite frequent with German speakers of English is the tendency to pronounce English A sounds as R, okay? And also differentiating between the V and the W. What do you mean? A terrible attempt to imitate a German speaker, but those are the general mistakes. Nowadays, not so much. Nowadays, it's very uncommon. But if you go to Germany, you speak with the older generations, you do occasionally hear it. French. I'm going to stop here making a joke against the French. I'll just jump into it. So the pronunciation of the H sound, and also differentiating between the long and the short vowel sounds. Those are the typical problems. Russians, okay, pronouncing the R sound, and again, similar to Germany, differentiating between the V and the W sounds. Now, for Arabic speakers, I'll say the Arabic speakers and then we'll go on to the Indian ones. For the Arabic speakers, the P and the V sounds, and also differentiating between the B and the P. Now for Indians, certain vowel and consonant sounds are usually the issue. Again, V and W come to mind as well. And also just one other thing with Indians. A couple of weeks ago I was working with an Indian developer. We were just doing some work on the site, and instead of hiring a developer to get them to do the work, what I do nowadays is I hire them and I ask them to teach me how to do the work. Just an irrelevant point there. We were on Zoom and we were talking. I'm asking questions and he's replying and he's shaking his head as in no, like from side to side. But it was really like a wobble. And I know from previous experience that this just kind of means like I understand, I think. But it was really sort of like distracting and confusing because I understood that body language as sort of like no. But really he was just confirming. And I know it's part of your culture and it probably happens unconsciously, but I would recommend for the exam just to be aware of this, especially nowadays if you're doing the exam online and you're doing it and the examiner is in Kent in England or in Huddersfield or wherever, and they might not be aware of these customs. So also, again, if you're from another culture and you might have some customs with your body language, it might be worth just checking to see if these are coming across when you're speaking English. So just thought I would mention that. Now then, how do you improve your pronunciation? Well, instantly, you can improve by slowing down. Speaking too quickly can undoubtedly negatively impact your pronunciation. Slow down and take the time to enunciate each word clearly. Like I've said in other tutorials, when I'm working with a student or when I'm trying to teach something, I break it down into its smallest components and then we go through each component and mastering it. And this is a very clear example. So if you want better pronunciation, or if you want better fluency, first you need to take a few steps back and probably work on your pronunciation first, because fluency will come, but it comes right at the end. Because, for example, you might be fluent, but you might not be that accurate. So when I'm working with a student, first we work on accuracy. And pronunciation is usually a big factor in accuracy, in speaking accurately. The grammar is as well. And then the final stage to work on is fluency. I'll speak more about this later when I'm talking about connected speech. Second point, enunciation. I mentioned it briefly a second ago, but what this means is focusing, paying attention to the individual sounds in words. Now, funny story, when I do this back home in Yorkshire, in England, people believe I am posh. I find that kind of funny. But it sounds different. There is nobody that doesn't understand me, but it does sound odd because in England, and especially in Yorkshire, especially in the north, certain parts of the words don't get pronounced. I come along, an English teacher who's learned how to speak properly, and it sounds weird. However, if you are a non-native English speaker, you do need to speak like this at the beginning, because it's just going to help the other person understand you. So enunciation, work on the vowel and consonant sounds that are challenging for you. It might be from that, from the few suggestions I gave before, if you're French, if you're German, whatever. Third point, listen and mimic. Listen to native English speakers and imitate their pronunciation. BBC News is the best place for this, in all honesty. It's standard pronunciation. You're going to get the vocabulary. There's going to be topical IELTS-related topics. And when you're listening, you want to slow it down if you can. And you want to just copy the intonation, the stress patterns, even the connected speech if you're at that level. Slow it down and just mimic it. And this is really developing your listening skills as well. Number 4, use pronunciation resources. I keep saying now, all in 2023, smart students are using tools. There's lots of pronunciation apps and websites out there, and they provide you exercises and examples and, use tools, not information. Practice connected speech. Now, when I learned about this one, I was really surprised because it's something that I'd been doing unconsciously all my life. And it also explained why I couldn't understand a single word when Spaniards were speaking. However, what does connected speech mean? Well, in English, we might read a phrase that says something like, she is an engineer. And the reason why I said it like that is just to show that's disconnected speech. Every sound, every syllable is disconnected. She is an engineer. Now, if I say it in a more natural way, it'd be, she's an engineer. And it's got pushed together. And now there is less enunciation. This is more natural. And don't try and jump to connected speech. First, you need to enunciate. Well, first you need to work on your accuracy, then your enunciation, your pronunciation. And then once you've got those two together, you work on speeding up with the goal of fluency. But there's a step in between which is called connected speech, where you, in a lot of cases, unconsciously push some sounds together and some of them get lost in the other or pushed into the next word. She's an engineer. Now, what's the negative impact of poor pronunciation in IELTS Part 3? Good question, Ben. Right then, so it can definitely hinder your communication skills if you are not pronouncing the words correctly. I remember actually in Spain, I had one tutor tell me, he said very proudly, I've never been to England. You don't need to go to England to speak English. And all four of us were like, sorry, what did you say? We couldn't understand a word he was saying. Ironically. So I'm not saying you have to go to England, but I do want to stress that you need to make sure that people do understand you, you know? And there's quite common misinterpretation or mispronouncing of words that can lead to misunderstandings. We definitely want to get the word beach and bitch clear, okay? Because, you know, I like going to Spain because of the lovely beaches. If we pronounce that one wrong, then people are going to get a very different opinion about me. So it's very important. Now, a lack of clarity, poor pronunciation can make your answer sound unclear and difficult to follow. And you don't really want this. If you've got quite a strong accent, what usually happens with listeners is that they'll just tune out and try and focus on that keyword and just try and latch onto this, you know? And I don't know, maybe you're explaining something quite slightly more complex. Now, if they're only catching the keywords, then you're going to sound less coherent and you're going to lose points. Now, also, pronunciation issues can disrupt the flow of your speech and ultimately end up in reduced fluency, which is a criteria. So again, this is why pronunciation is incredibly important. You know, if you're not pronouncing the words correctly could lead to pauses, hesitation, and also, interestingly, confidence will affect you here. This is why we call that course Speaking Confidence, because after going through the course, you do get a boost in your confidence, which ultimately spills over into your fluency. You know, you got those better, you're feeling more equipped, you've got the framework, you know how to answer quickly and coherently and automatically. You know how to buy yourself a few seconds. You've got all these skills under your belt, and now it's just a case of shining. Now, two things before we finish. I'll tell you what my wife said to my parents, and I just want to mention we have a promotion at the moment. When you sign up to the Premium Essay Checker, and really, you don't want to be cheap on this. This is your IELTS exam. This is going to dictate your future. Surely you can afford $12 just to upgrade. It's for 1 month. Slam it full of essays. You can use it as much as you want. You don't even have to write new essays. Just find your old essays, put them through. Use the premium one. It gives you a more accurate answer because it's measuring more data points. Because it's measuring more data points, it takes more computing power. That's why we have to charge for it. You can submit as many essays as you want. And I'm mentioning this because when you upgrade, you're going to get an offer to buy one of our courses, which is the new Band 9 Writing Frameworks courses we're releasing. And as part of a promotion, you're also going to get the Speaking Confidence course for free. So if you are interested in passing, not taking the IELTS, if you're interested in passing the IELTS fast, then sign up to the newsletter or just go directly, get that premium subscription going. It's easy to cancel and you'll get the offer for the courses and all the additional bonuses as well. Now, finally, before we finish, my wife, what did she say to my parents? I can't remember how this started, but she was like, oh yeah, I want to go to Robin Hood's Bay. This is where we were going. And it was, surprisingly, it was raining. But anyway, we were going to Robin Hood's Bay. And yes, I am talking about Robin Hood, the famous person who used to rob from the rich and give to the poor. Apparently he had a bay. It's a beautiful little corner of England in Yorkshire. And we were going and it was raining. And my wife said, oh yeah, if it's... she said something like, yeah, I want to buy some yellow rubber willies. My mum was like, what? And I cracked up. And then my mum realized and she cracked up and my wife was like, what? And I was like, yeah, I'm sorry, she means wellies. The rubber wellies that you put on your feet, not willies. But anyway, it was kind of cute. So that's why pronunciation is very important, especially if you're meeting your partner's parents. You want them to think highly of you. You probably want them to think that you're concerned about your footwear rather than the nighttime activities. Anyway, that's that. Let's finish this topic. That's it from me. Go to IELTSPodcast.com. Sign up to the newsletter if you need more help, if you want to pass the IELTS exam fast. If you've got a friend who's struggling with the IELTS exam, send them this tutorial. Send them the URL, IELTSPodcast.com. Tell them to subscribe to our tutorials. And also, finally, if you do enjoy these tutorials with me, I'd love it. I'll be your... No, I'm not going to say that. I would absolutely love it. I'll be your servant if you leave us a review, obviously a positive one rather than a negative one. Give us a 5-star review on iTunes, on Google Play, whatever platform you're listening to. Take a screenshot, send it in, and we will reward you with something of pretty high value, actually. Yes, it is a bribe. But it's just a case of, I'd say it's more of an exchange. Anyway, have a beautiful day. Good luck with the IELTS exam. I wish you all the best. Good luck. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to IELTSPodcast.com.